Hi, everyone, and welcome to Know Your Data. I'm Kevin Hannigan, the Chief Learning Officer at Click, and I'm joined by our good friend Alan Schwartz, a former Pulitzer Prize-nominated reporter for the New York Times, and also a member of the Data Literacy Project's Advisory Board. Now, what we've done previously in these episodes is focus on the data, the graphs, in the terms that we see every day. Previous episodes have all focused on COVID. We're going to do that as well in this episode, but beyond that, we're going to be expanding to cover non-COVID topics. But back to this episode, we're going to be talking about a term that we see all over the news today, and that term is spike. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Alan to get us started.
Thanks. You can't turn your head these days, Kev, without seeing some headline about spike. Here's pediatric cases and hospitalizations see 20% spike since classrooms reopened. Coronavirus spike pushes Canadian authorities to limit large gatherings, and coronavirus spikes in Spain, France, and UK raise specter of second wave. Spike is a mathematical word. It means increase, but it also means a fast increase. How much of an increase? How fast? What's the time period? We need to know what the time period is because you can choose whatever time period you want to change the entire narrative. And that narrative will be delivered by words. There are words that are used to characterize increases, not just spike. There are things above it and below it that you have to watch out for. So let's get into it. How do we decide, Kevin, if something qualifies as a spike at all?
Yeah, really good question. Let's take a look at a couple quick examples and scenarios to see this. So on this graph here, we're charting average daily new cases. And you can see from week 39 to week 40, we went up from 10,000 to 14,000, and then up to 19.6 thousand. You can see the trajectory. This is going exponentially. That's seriously a spike. That is something we saw earlier in coronavirus related to the curve that we're all trying to flatten. So that's an obvious one. But let's look at one that's a little more gradual. So maybe we go from 10,000 to 10,250 to 10,500 and follow this slope all the way to the end of the year. We're only increasing 250 new cases every week on average. But it's still over time, to your point of time periods, we've still had 3,200 increase from now to the end of the year. So this one's a little bit harder to detect. But let's say we take the gradual increase and just bump it up from 250 to 1,000 every week. So going from 10K to 11K to 12K and project out, that is a gradual but steep increase where we're going doubling in size over the term from the current week to the end of the year. But in reality, we don't see it happen like this, right? What you're going to see on the charts and on the news is you're going to see it fluctuate and flutter from week to week. And you might see a chart that looks more like this, where it's going up and it's going down. And you can see from week 46 to week 47, there's a gradual decrease, but it goes right back up in 48, right? So it's not something that we should look at in that point in time. To your point, Alan, about time periods, and many times you won't see a graph like this. What someone will do is add in a moving average or a rolling average, like you see in the black line here, which is a 4-week moving average that kind of takes out those spikes and just shows general trend or direction of where it is going. You can see in the black line, it is trending upward and it's increasing, but it takes the panic out of seeing those daily and weekly spikes that don't mean anything to us.
Yeah, and on that graph, you see, there's a record in week, whatever it is, 41, and then another record in a couple of weeks, and then another record. Record is something, of course, that the media loves. I was a sports writer for a long time. Here's an example. The World Health Organization had a report where there was a single-day spike in global cases, 307,000, which is obviously a lot. But it was only 1,000 cases higher than the previous record, so it wasn't really that much of a change. They also didn't tell us what it, quote unquote, spiked from. Did it spike from 306? Did it spike from 120? They don't tell us. But, the whole record thing, when something's increasing, which we know it's going to over the next 3 months, we're going to have a lot of records. The question is, how significant are they? One really nice example of the handling of spikes or increases or significant increases is this chart from Axios that's really great. Here in the United States, they show not only which states are increasing or decreasing, but how fast they are increasing or decreasing. And that's really what a spike is. It's not just an increase, it's a very fast and maybe even sustained increase. And that's what we want to see. What we don't want to see are misleading charts. And Kevin, I know you have a couple of examples of those.
Yeah, exactly, Alan. So in addition to the time periods, make sure you're looking at the axis ranges as well. So I'll show you a couple of charts here. This is one of the ones we saw in the original scenario. Pay attention to the slope because it's the exact same data in all three charts. So in this one, pay attention to the slope. Now what we're going to do is we're going to change the y-axis to not start at 0, but to start at the lowest value. We're starting at 10,000 cases. You see the slope looks a lot steeper than it did on the previous chart. Or conversely, we could add a higher up range on the y-axis to project where we might be going in the future. And if we do that, the slope is going to look a lot less steep. So depending on which chart's used and you see it in the news and the media, pay attention to the axis ranges as well as the time periods so you can truly understand what it's trying to tell you.
You know, I also just realized something, Kevin. Another thing you're going to see is if those charts are horizontal, the slope is going to appear less. If they were made vertical, the slope would have to be a lot more because it would be squished in that way. And I can guarantee you that people are going to monkey with that. Of course they are. Let's put that fluttering slide back up because you can see how somebody could just choose whatever time period they want to make it look like the trend is increasing or decreasing. We know that it's basically increasing, and there are plenty of opportunities to show an increase. But if you wanted to show a decrease at certain points, let's just say week 47, you could say, hey, it's decreased, whatever it would be there, 2,000 over 5 weeks. It's decreased 16%. Everything we're doing is good. And yet the trend is still going higher, whatever time period you choose, whether, you know, like the stock market. Unless you're at the highest ever, you can make it look like the stock market's going down even when it's really going up. Whatever, you know, if you choose a really small time period, you can say whatever you want. Like the second, the instant, the millisecond where someone clicks play on this video, we will be the fastest growing series on YouTube. Woohoo! Pretty silly. But people do that. You see that with the phone companies where they're like, we're the fastest growing such and such, or, you know, some sort of V8 truck. Like, whoa, we're the fastest growing model among certain model, you know, whatever it is. You see people monkey with time periods all the time. You also see them monkey with words. And that's what I was getting at earlier. The words we use to describe increases make all the difference because you can either downplay the increase with words or you can exaggerate them with words. And let's look at those. If someone wanted to look at an increase and say, it's no big deal, they'd call it a blip. Okay? Then if there's, you know, then the next one is probably increase. That's sort of acknowledging, yeah, okay, there's an increase. And then you're going to see significant increase, which I guarantee you in the media does not mean statistically significant. It means, yeah, it's kind of a lot. You know, the writer or the broadcasters can be like, it's a significant increase. It's a meaningful increase when, you know, it's just subjective. Then you have some words that are starting to get a little more serious. A jump in cases, surge, wave. Now, surge, wave, those aren't that scary. The next one is why we're here, spike. Okay, that one is like, pay attention, folks, there's a spike. It's a dissonant word. Then there's more, though. You get to skyrocket. The number of cases have skyrocketed or exploded. And I can tell you at the New York Times, they outlawed those words among reporters. And they told editors, take those words out because no one really knows what skyrocket and explode means. They're so subjective. And then, of course, you have the granddaddy of them all, meteoric rise. Hey, folks, meteors fall. So can we please stop using that phrase?
Yeah, great points, Alan. So let's take this episode to a recap and take a look at our 3 takeaways. So what is a spike? Well, we know it's an increase, but it's important to understand how much and how fast. It's not just a rise. It's going to be a rise over a short time period. And remember that time period, that's the vital component to it. Whatever time period you choose can change the entire narrative. And as Alan just depicted, there's lots of words that are going to be used, like blip and spike, to meteoric rise. these words can and will be used to either downplay or exaggerate the situation.
Yeah, I mean, we know that particularly as the US election gets closer and closer, we are going to see the politicalization of these data words, of these words that are talking about the same numbers, but the words we choose and the ways that we depict the data in visualizations, that's going to make all the difference. So as a reminder, if you want to know more or you want us to cover something in a future episode, you have questions, you have requests, please, Instagram, Twitter, we're all over the place. Hashtag BeDataBrilliant. You can also email us at hello@thedataliteracyproject.org. For Kevin Hannigan, I'm Alan Schwartz. This is the beginning of season 2 of Know Your Data. We'll see you next time.